My sister stole my wedding date to save the family money. Until her fiancé saw my texts. My sister sent out her save the date 6 weeks before mine, using my exact wedding date. And when I called her about it, she laughed and said, "Come on, it's not that deep. We're saving the family money on travel." I want you to sit with that sentence for a second because I certainly had to. Not a coincidence. Not an accident of overlapping calendars. She knew. She had known for 4 months, since the night I told her, crying happy tears at her kitchen table, that Malik had finally proposed and we'd picked June the 14th because it was the anniversary of our first date. My name is Corinne Baptiste, 30 years old, and my younger sister Simone is 27 years old. I want to be completely clear before I go any further. This isn't a story about rivalry or two women fighting over cake flavors or seating. This is a story about what happens when the people closest to you decide your milestones are simply raw material for their own and expect you to smile through it because that's what good sisters do. Simone got engaged 2 months after I did, to a man named Devin she'd been dating for a year and a half. I was genuinely happy for her. I helped her pick out her engagement ring insurance policy, for God's sake. When she started venue shopping, she asked me a dozen questions about how I found mine, what vendors I liked, what my budget breakdown looked like. I answered every single one, because that's what you do for your sister. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that she was quietly building her entire wedding as a mirror image of mine, down to the date. The save the dates arrived at my mother's house on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, completely unannounced. My mother called me, confused, holding 2 identical envelopes with 2 different names, but the same June date printed inside. "Baby, did y'all decide to do a joint thing?" she asked. I remember standing in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, feeling something cold spread through my chest that had nothing to do with confusion and everything to do with recognition. I called Simone immediately. That's when she said it. "Come on, it's not that deep. We're saving the family money on travel." I want you to understand what that sentence actually meant, underneath the casual, breezy, almost bored tone she used to deliver it, as if none of this mattered at all. It meant she had looked at my wedding, the one I had been planning for a year, the one my fiancé Malik and I had saved for ourselves without a dime of help from either family, and decided it was simply convenient scaffolding for her own event. Not something to respect, not something to work around, something to reuse. I didn't scream at her on that call. I've learned, the hard way, that screaming gives people an excuse to call you dramatic instead of actually hearing you. I asked her calmly to change her date. She refused, said the venue was already booked, that changing it now would cost them their deposit, that I was being selfish for expecting her to rearrange her whole wedding around mine when, in her words, we could just share the weekend like a normal family. Here's the part of this story that I need you to really sit with, because it's the part that changed everything. My mother, when I called her devastated, didn't take my side. She said, "Corinne, you two have always been close. Why can't you just be excited to share the day?" I hung up that call and sat on my bathroom floor for a long time. The same bathroom floor where, 6 years earlier, I had learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you will hand you the invoice for your own hurt feelings instead. There is one detail I haven't told you yet, the one that made this whole situation feel less like a scheduling mix-up and more like something deliberate. Malik, going through old messages one evening while we finalized our seating chart, found a text Simone had sent him months earlier, back when he was still trying to figure out proposal logistics, and had asked her, casually, whether she thought June the 14th was a good date. Her reply, preserved in his phone the whole time, simply said, "That's actually a really good date. Low-key, perfect weather, too." She had known the date was significant to us before Malik even proposed. She had helped pick it in a way, and then quietly claimed it as her own 4 months later as though the conversation had never happened. When Malik showed me that message, I didn't feel angry so much as I felt strangely calm. The way you feel when a puzzle piece finally clicks into a picture you'd already mostly figured out. I gave myself 2 weeks before I did anything because I have learned that clarity beats emotion every single time. I didn't cancel my venue. I didn't change my date. I did something quieter instead. I started paying very close attention to the wedding group chat Simone had added me to, the one where she and our mother and 2 cousins were coordinating logistics, because Simone, in her rush to build a wedding around mine, had also started borrowing my vendor contacts directly, my florist, my day of coordinator, even my photographer, all without asking, all assuming that because I'd shared the information helpfully months earlier, it was now simply hers to use. I called my photographer, a woman named Priya who I'd already put a deposit down with, and asked her directly whether Simone had reached out. She had, 3 weeks earlier, trying to book Priya for the exact same date, not realizing Priya was already contracted to me, exclusively, for that day. Priya, professional and unbothered, had simply told Simone she was unavailable and left it at that, never mentioning it to me, because it hadn't seemed relevant at the time. That was the piece that finally clarified everything. Simone hadn't just copied my date carelessly. She had tried, quietly, to take my actual vendors, the people I had already paid, already trusted, already built my day around, and route them toward her wedding instead, assuming either that I wouldn't notice, or that if I did, I would once again simply absorb the inconvenience the way I always had. I didn't confront her a second time. I let my attorney, actually just a very organized part of myself with a spreadsheet and a folder of screenshots, do the quiet work instead. I forwarded every vendor contract I had to Malik, so he understood exactly what was mine and exclusively mine. I sent a polite, entirely factual message to the small wedding party group chat, clarifying which vendors were contracted to me specifically, not to avoid confusion, but to make sure nobody accidentally coordinated logistics around a date and a team that legally belonged to someone else. Devin, Simone's fiancé, saw that message before Simone had a chance to explain it away. He texted me directly that night, something I hadn't expected, asking gently whether everything in the group chat was accurate. I told him the truth, calmly, with receipts. The overlapping date, the vendor calls, the months of quiet planning happening in the shadow of mine. He went quiet for a long moment, and then he said something I will never forget. I didn't know any of this. I thought it was Simone's idea from the start. What happened after that wasn't my doing directly, but it happened because the truth finally reached someone who had a genuine stake in hearing it clearly. Devin and Simone had a conversation that apparently lasted most of the night. 2 days later, Simone called me, not to apologize exactly, but to inform me tightly that they had changed their date after all, moved it to September, and that Devin had insisted on it once he understood the full picture. I didn't gloat, not once, not even quietly to myself in the mirror the way I might have a year earlier. I didn't need to. My wedding happened on June the 14th, exactly as planned, with my vendors, my florist, my photographer, all fully present and entirely mine, in a day that finally, completely, belonged to no one but Malik and me. My mother came. Simone didn't, choosing instead to nurse a grievance about a boundary that had always, from the very beginning, been reasonable. It has been 8 months now. Simone and I speak occasionally, carefully, the way you speak to someone you're still deciding whether to fully trust again, testing the water one short phone call at a time. She got married in September, a beautiful day by every account I've heard, one that was, finally, entirely her own. I think that's the part that still sits with me the most. She could have had that from the start. She simply assumed mine was available for the taking. If you are watching this and someone close to you has ever treated your milestones as raw material for their own, quietly borrowed, quietly claimed, I want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to protect what belongs to you without apologizing for the boundary. You are allowed to let the truth reach the people who actually need to hear it, calmly with receipts, instead of absorbing the inconvenience one more time.